The United States is intensifying its military campaign against Iran's missile infrastructure, with B-52 stratofortress bombers playing a central role in long-range strike operations. These aircraft are being used to target key ballistic missile production facilities, command nodes, and associated military infrastructure linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The B-52, known for its heavy payload capacity and long endurance, is capable of carrying both cruise missiles and precision-guided munitions such as JDAMs. This allows it to execute both standoff strikes from long distances and direct bombing runs over target areas. Military analysts suggest this dual capability is being used to systematically dismantle Iran's missile production network. Operations are being conducted over extended ranges, with bombers launching from bases in Europe and flying deep into contested regions. Aerial refueling enables these missions to continue for long durations, allowing repeated strikes on multiple high-value targets within a single operation. That matters because the United States is not dealing with a single isolated launch site or one exposed runway target. What is being targeted here is a broader network: assembly halls, support buildings, hardened storage areas, underground command facilities, and the logistical backbone that allows missile forces to regenerate after each wave of combat. Among the primary targets are ballistic missile assembly facilities, drone production sites, and underground command structures believed to coordinate tracking and targeting operations in the Strait of Hormuz. Satellite imagery released by military sources indicates that several of these facilities have sustained heavy damage, with structural collapse and large debris fields rendering them inoperable. In military terms, that kind of damage is significant because it goes beyond temporary disruption. A runway can be repaired, a launcher can be replaced, but once major production halls, storage depots, engineering sections, and command infrastructure are put out of service at the same time, the pace of reconstitution slows dramatically. In addition to fixed infrastructure, strikes have also focused on coastal missile systems and fast attack boat networks that pose a threat to maritime traffic in the region. These assets are considered a key component of Iran's strategy to control or disrupt movement through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical global energy choke points. That makes the current strike pattern more than just an air campaign against inland missile sites. It also connects directly to maritime security, oil shipping routes, and the ability of regional actors to keep commercial traffic moving without disruption. U.S. strategy appears to follow a phased approach. The initial phase focuses on degrading Iran's offensive military capabilities, including missile production and air defense systems. In other words, the first goal is to make Iran weaker. The second goal is to make the waterway safer. Those are related, but they are not the same mission. Destroying factories and launch nodes reduces future attacks. Pressuring coastal systems and proxy-linked maritime assets reduces immediate danger to shipping. Supporting the B-52 operations are advanced fighter aircraft, such as the F-15 and F-35, which provide air cover and additional strike capability. Other assets, including A-10 aircraft and attack helicopters, are expected to play roles in more precise engagements against remaining targets. This layered structure matters because the B-52 is not being used in isolation. Heavy bombers can do the large-scale destructive work, but modern air campaigns depend on complementary platforms. Fighters can escort, suppress threats, and respond more flexibly to changing conditions. Attack aircraft and helicopters become more useful later, once the battlefield has been softened and the more dangerous air defenses have been degraded. There are also indications that a Marine Expeditionary Unit may be deployed to the region. This force, typically consisting of around 2,500 personnel, is designed for rapid response and amphibious operations. Its role would likely involve targeting smaller, high-risk threats that remain after large-scale bombardment operations are complete. That could include mobile maritime threats, launch positions near the coast, staging points for fast boats, or command elements that are too dispersed or too temporary to justify repeated heavy bomber strikes. Iranian officials have responded with strong rhetoric, warning of retaliation against regional infrastructure, including energy and desalination facilities. They have also signaled their intent to restrict access to the Strait of Hormuz for what they describe as hostile vessels, raising concerns about potential disruptions to global oil supply chains. That rhetoric is important because it shows Iran is still trying to project deterrence, even while absorbing pressure. In conflicts like this, messaging becomes part of the battlefield. Tehran needs to show supporters and adversaries that it it still has options. Washington, on the other hand, wants to show that continued resistance will only bring deeper military losses. At the same time, a coalition of international partners has issued statements emphasizing the importance of keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. Multiple countries across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East are being drawn into the situation, indicating a broader international concern over the stability of the region. This expands the crisis beyond a simple bilateral confrontation. The strait is not only important to the United States, it matters to economies that depend on uninterrupted energy flows, to allied navies that may eventually help patrol contested waters, and to governments that want to prevent a regional conflict from becoming a global supply shock. The scale of these operations highlights the unique role of the B-52. Unlike lighter tactical aircraft, it can deliver massive payloads over wide areas in a single mission. This makes it particularly effective against large, fortified facilities that require repeated and heavy strikes to neutralize. In practical terms, that means a bomber like this can hit a complex target set in one sortie that might otherwise require numerous tactical aircraft missions spread across time. That concentration of force is one reason the platform still matters in modern war, despite its age. There is also a psychological dimension to using a bomber of this kind. The B-52 is not just destructive, it is symbolic. Its appearance signals persistence, range, and escalation capacity. When a platform with this reputation is used repeatedly against missile-related targets, the message is not limited to the damage on the ground. It also tells Iranian commanders that their protected sites, underground nodes, and support infrastructure are no longer safe simply because they are hardened or dispersed. That can force defensive changes, relocation, interruptions to production, and slower decision-making. Another important point is that this campaign is not only about what gets destroyed, but about what gets denied. Even when a facility is not flattened beyond recognition, repeated strikes can make it unusable, dangerous to operate, or impossible to maintain at full pace. Workers disperse, equipment cannot be moved freely, transport routes become vulnerable, command personnel are forced underground or shifted to backup sites. This creates friction throughout the military system. Over time, enough friction can reduce effectiveness almost as much as direct destruction. The Strait of Hormuz remains the most strategically sensitive part of this story. The reason outside powers are reacting so strongly is simple. Even limited instability there can affect oil prices, insurance rates, shipping patterns, and military deployments across the region. That is why operations tied to the strait are being watched as closely as the deep strikes on inland production infrastructure. There is also a practical reason the B-52 keeps appearing in this type of mission. In a prolonged operation, endurance matters almost as much as striking power. Aircraft that can travel long distances, remain supported through aerial refueling, and deliver major ordnance loads repeatedly become valuable tools in sustaining pressure. Instead of relying only on fast, tactical responses, planners can use a bomber fleet to hold a wide set of targets at risk over time. As the situation develops, attention is shifting toward the next phase of operations, where the focus will move from large-scale destruction to securing strategic locations and countering remaining threats in the region. That transition will be critical. Large bombardment can break the backbone of an enemy network, but the final challenge is usually different: identifying what survives, preventing reconstitution, and making sure that smaller remaining threats cannot still produce a strategic shock. That is where the wider coalition, maritime patrols, supporting aircraft, and any rapid response forces would become even more important. So at this stage, the picture is becoming clearer. The B-52 is being used not as a relic of the past, but as a central instrument in a modern pressure campaign against missile infrastructure, command systems, and regional threat networks. However, there are still risks. Iran retains the ability to carry out limited retaliatory actions, particularly against infrastructure in the region. Even isolated strikes on energy or desalination facilities could have psychological and economic effects. In addition, dispersed command elements and underground networks may continue to function at reduced capacity, allowing for sporadic resistance. Another challenge is that eliminating infrastructure does not immediately eliminate intent. Leadership structures, even when weakened, can adapt and shift tactics. This means the conflict may not end with a clear or immediate resolution, but instead transition into a lower intensity phase where pressure continues from both sides. From a strategic perspective, the effectiveness of this campaign will depend on whether the current pressure can be sustained long enough to prevent recovery. If production capabilities remain disrupted and maritime threats are contained, the overall risk level in the region could decrease. If not, the situation could stabilize temporarily before escalating again. Iran. For now, the focus remains on maintaining control over key strategic points and ensuring that remaining threats do not regain momentum. The next phase will likely determine whether this campaign results in long-term degradation of Iran's military capability or simply a temporary setback, as both sides adjust to a shifting operational environment.